Hey guys, so we got a couple things to talk about today dealing with parallel and perpendicular lines. Sneak a U in there. And basically their slopes. So first off, let's talk about what are the definitions of these two words. Parallel, which you've probably seen before, heard before, are two lines or more. I could really put two lines, but really lines that never intersect. I mean, if you graph them, they would go on forever and never cross each other. So think of some things that are parallel. In most things, like I'm looking at my computer screen, the sides of the screen are parallel. They're never going to cross. Train tracks, for the most part, are parallel. Yes, I know they curve. Tracks cross each other, different things, but you want them to be parallel so they stay on the track. They never intersect. So you have two lines. If you graph them, they would never cross each other. The symbol for parallel, we use kind of two angled lines instead of writing out the word parallel all the time. So our other end then is perpendicular lines. Well, what are perpendicular lines? You might say, oh, there are two lines that cross. Well, no, those are just intersecting lines. Most lines are intersecting. Perpendicular is very specific, though. They are lines that intersect at a right, I'll write the word out instead of the symbol, angle. So our symbol for perpendicular is kind of an upside down capital T, but they would be two lines that when they cross each other, they don't just cross, they cross at a right angle. Perpendicular lines also extremely important. Most buildings, the wall and the floor and the ceilings, or hopefully let's say wall and floor, are perpendicular to each other. Otherwise, we got problems. The buildings are going to fall down. So that's what we're looking at. Those are the two types of lines. Now, parallel lines, their slopes, okay, or M, or our slopes, are exactly the same. So parallel line slopes are exactly the same. What do I mean? You said the slope of one line was 2/3. What's the slope of a line parallel to that? 2/3. Why? If it goes up 2, right 3, up 2, right 3, this other one would have to have the same pattern for them to never intersect each other. Keep going up 2, right 3, up 2, right 3, and so on. Okay? Now, perpendicular lines slopes are what we call opposite reciprocals. So opposite means the sign is different. Reciprocal means that you flip the fraction. So for example, if the slope, let's say, was the same 2/3, since it's positive, the opposite part would make it negative. The reciprocal part would flip it to be 3/2. So it's not just changing the sign, it's also flipping it to make it 3/2 or whatever the fraction is. Another example, let's say we have a slope here of 7. A parallel slope would be exactly the same, 7. A perpendicular slope would be opposite, so it's positive, I make it negative, and I flip it. You're saying, well, how could I flip 7? Well, remember, 7 is really like 7/1, so a perpendicular slope would be negative 1/7. Okay? All right. Let's try another one. Let's say I have a slope of negative 5/4. Well, what's a parallel slope? The exact same thing. It would be negative 5/4. What's a perpendicular slope? We changed the sign. It was negative, now it's positive, and we flip it. So instead of 5/4, it would be 4/5. Okay, so in some of what you're going to do for your skill practice is you're going to just graph some of these. So for example, if I had a line that, was here, let's 1, 2, 3, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. So that's a line. You say, all right, graph a parallel line. Well, it can't be on top of it. It has to be a different line. And in order to make that happen, then I would just say, okay, like here's my new y-intercept. If this slope was 1, 2, I'm going to go up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. And you're graphing it out so that they would look parallel to each other. Okay, if you had perpendicular, find the slope. Okay, and then you would, let's say we have 1, 2, 3. I went, same thing, up 1, start here, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. You can graph it out. You just need to do a slope that has, instead of 1/2, the perpendicular slope would be -2 over 1 or just -2. So I could pick another point. I could actually go right here, and instead of going up 2, I'm going to go down 2, right 1. Down 2, right 1. And you're going to sketch that out. That would make it perpendicular. Okay, we'll do a little bit more tomorrow with it where we'll look at the equations, but for right now, all we're trying to find is, all right, a parallel slope is exactly the same. A perpendicular slope, opposite reciprocal. Change the sign and flip it. So that's all for today with it. Tomorrow we'll get into, what if I have an equation? How do I write the equation? How do I find the slope from the equation? All those different things with it. But for today, that's it. Nice job.